Ed, for you, then, what was sort of the standout moment?
Well, I mean, they're two stunningly obvious ones because they're both kind of important, both important here, important for the world. The first is obviously the general election. For me, the standout image was Rishi Sunak in the rain. I think we had a clip of Richard there saying, "Where's the umbrella?" which is the question that Britain has been asking for 8 months.
Why didn't someone give an umbrella?
Nobody can understand it, but it was a kind of metaphor for the position the Tories, my party, had got themselves into by that stage, and they lost a landslide election. Then for me was obviously the American election, but weirdly it was the attempted assassination attempt on President Trump, that extraordinary photograph of him pumping his fist in the air, you know, millimetres from history being changed in the most awful way, and now effectively a Trump landslide as well. So those are the two defining moments for 2024 for me.
It's interesting, isn't it? When all's well that ends well, we move on from something, as you say, which could have been unbelievably horrible, which was the attempted assassination of Trump. Because if that bullet had hit him, we would have had a Kennedy moment.
Absolutely.
And the footage of that wasn't shown, what actually happened when he was assassinated, wasn't shown for decades, because it was so awful. But that would have been on live television.
Absolutely, yeah. And it would have changed the election result, I'm sure, in some shape or form. And you know, Trump is such an all-powerful figure. He dominates his party. He dominates the political agenda. It's going to be a kind of crazy ride with his presidency. It could go in all sorts of different directions. So that was a moment of history for me.
And the attack itself, you could argue, actually did change the course of the election because, you know, that the assassination attempt, I mean, the polls definitely did swing in a direction that was favourable.
Actually galvanised support, didn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was a shocking moment, wasn't it? And but you know, as you said, it would have been on live television, but not just that. People have on social media, people were filming. We would have had every single angle of that in a way that would have been,
And what about there's a Zapruder footage of the '63 assassination, but as you say, multiple images. Doesn't bear thinking about.
The big moments for you, then?
I mean, it has to be the election. I was in Parliament on the day that it was called, and I was interviewing a Labour MP at the time, and I said, "Oh, I think he's about to call an election." And she just started screaming. She just started screaming. And then I walked out of the office, and I spoke to another Labour MP, and I said to him, "Oh, I think Sunak's about to call an election." And he went, "Why?" And I said, "What's the matter?" And he goes, "I've got to call my wife. We've just booked a caravan from the beginning of July."
Oh, no!
Got to cancel the caravan.
Suddenly lots of holiday plans were changed, weren't they?
Yeah. What a moment. I mean, my own as well. But what a moment. I mean, that election, it was absolutely, sorry, but it was absolutely disastrous for you, and I do think you deserved it. But
I acknowge that. But I mean, you had to cancel your caravan holiday?
Not my caravan holiday. It was the Labour MP's caravan holiday.
If reform didn't exist, supposing just to wipe them out of the picture, what would the result have been?
I still think it would have been a landslide.
Do you?
Yes, I think it would have been a landslide. I think the overwhelming view of the country was the Tories had to be got out. You saw the Lib Dems decimating the Tories in the south. I think Labour would have just got bigger majorities against Tories in the north. I think equally Reform took votes from Labour and the Conservatives. But you're looking ahead in one sense, Richard, because I think the defining thing for British politics, the global politics is a whole other debate, is 2025 is what's going to happen with Reform. Are they going to consolidate their position effectively as a big third party in British politics and a real threat to the Conservatives? You've seen this massive row, in my view, a completely misjudged row by Kemi Badenoch about the membership numbers for Reform, where she's kind of ramped it up. I think encouraged people to join Reform. And I think Nigel Farage is going to milk the Trump presidency, his friendship with Elon Musk. Who knows? That could go either way. The British people could react against it and say, we don't want a political party that's in hock to American billionaires, or they might just say, if it's good enough for America, it's good enough for us.
So it will be really interesting next year, won't it? I was just going to say, politically, there could be a lot of big change next year.
Well, I mean, Labour have left this huge vacuum with Nigel Farage's relationship with Donald Trump and Elon Musk in a way that could be very detrimental to Starmer's, Prime Ministerial tenure, because if Nigel Farage is allowed to continue being friends with them, he's sort of got the backdoor entry, as he's got their ear. He could, really actually scupper any future relationship that we have between the UK and the US.
Because whatever you think, and people watching will have very mixed views about Nigel Farage, whatever you think about him, he's a formidable political operator. He's a very good communicator, whatever you think about what he's communicating. And you combine that with Musk's money, and you've got a real game changer, haven't you, potentially, in this country? Yeah,
and Labour have the opportunity right now to halt that money entering UK politics, and they don't seem to be doing anything about it. So that £100 million at the moment is actually free to enter Reform's pockets.
Through a British registered company?
Through an enterprise here, yeah, absolutely.
Through a loophole, basically.
Yeah, through a loophole. But, I mean, loopholes exist, don't they? It's still frightening.
What about other key moments then, Ed? Anything else that you think we should be mentioning of moments from 2024?
Well, I think the Paris Olympics, I think the British athletes did very well. I see Keely Hodgkinson has got an MBE, and other athletes have also been awarded in the New Year's honours lists, which were published just last night. So, although obviously the Paris Olympics weren't the same as the London Olympics for us in terms of dominating the City of London, I think the Brits acquitted themselves very well. And it's a kind of highlight, because it does feel to me like 2024 was a bleak year. Now, I'm saying that partly as a Tory and saw a Labour landslide, but I think most people did feel with the things like the cost of living crisis carrying on, inflation and so on, it was a tough year. And big sporting events are obviously nice highlights, and it's always good when Britain does well.
Nice to have those moments of joy at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ava, what about for you? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, as we saw in the VT, the Southport riots, not those specifically, but the clean-up operation afterwards, I think that really showed actually the best of Britain, us all coming together to really, like, you know, to mend and to fix what had been broken. And then my big one was
look at the body language. She's a bit defensive about this one.
Stormzy and Maya Jama breaking up. You know, that ruined my year. You know, I really thought that they were going to make it. I thought that was going to be the relationship that would define the 2010s. But no, alas.
It wasn't to be.
It wasn't to be,
Why do we invest so much in other people's celebrity marriages?
Oh, just a bit of hope, Richard. You know, butter and olive oil, so expensive now. I've got to look somewhere else. You know, I've got to find a bit of hope somewhere.
Well, I was just thinking about Dua Lipa getting engaged, though.
Well, yeah, I had to let her know. I'll let her know that you're very disappointed. Yeah. But, you know...
But that's a beacon
many
of
men
hope.
in this country,
That'll carry you through 2025.
It will carry me, yes.
Listen, our top story today is about the New Year's honours. Of course, you know, there's lots there to celebrate. We're going to be speaking to two of the recipients later.
We certainly is.
Can't wait. Lee Castleton, one of the former sub-postmasters, among those who's been honoured. And also, at 103, the oldest recipient, Colin Bell, the World War II bomber fighter pilot, who we can't wait to speak to as well. But not everyone, it seems, has been so well received on this list. Sadiq Khan has caused controversy, hasn't he, by his nomination? A lot of the papers are talking about it today, and a lot of viewers getting in touch, actually, about this. Angela says, agree with some of the people mentioned in the News Honours list, such as the former sub-postmasters. I question exactly what Sadiq Khan has done for London, other than create problems for the people that live there and the people that go into London. There's so much more violent crime now than there's ever been. I mean, is that a fair...
Like I say, a lot of people contrasting his knighthood with what the sub-postmasters have got. This is a typical one from someone called Flappy Socks on X, formerly Twitter. It's about time the sub-postmasters got a bit of justice, but let's be real, Sadiq Khan and Knight has to be a joke, right? I mean, we haven't got a single positive comment about him.
I don't think that's fair at all, actually. I think Sadiq Khan has done a lot for London. I mean, if you look at the free school meals programme, that comes out of the Mayor of London's budget. That's not a government budget, and that has changed the lives of many primary school children in this country. And if he continues to be able to fund that programme, God knows what those children can go on to do. He's also done things like brought down pollution. And look, I know people get really angry about ULEZ, but at the end of the day, just a couple of years ago, I think I was even on here talking about that little girl who died of air pollution. And I'm sorry, but you do not have a right to drive your 4x4 in London at the detriment of some little girl's lungs.
So why does he get such a bad press?
Well, I think that, you know, he's the mayor that people love to hate. He's a Labour mayor, so I think that's sort of where it began while we had a Conservative government. And I think it's just easy, isn't it? It's easy to shout at someone for not letting you drive your car when actually... And it's harder to sell the benefits of not having smog in the capital.
Why didn't Londoners in particular hate Boris Johnson as much when he was mayor? Because he was a popular mayor.
Well, I mean, he had things like the Olympics, didn't he, to carry him through, and he had a lot of bluster, so he was able to, you know... But Boris Johnson was a big environmentalist, more of an environmentalist than Sadiq Khan has ever been, actually, and he actually laid the groundwork down for ULEZ and for the congestion charge in the way that we have it now.
Do you want to pile in on the mayor?
I'm pro Sadiq Khan. We came into Parliament together in 2005. We've been friendly ever since, and I texted him last night to congratulate him on his knighthood. I think he deserves a knighthood. He's won, I think it's 3 elections to be London mayor. That in itself is success. Londoners clearly want him to be their mayor. There are 2 backbenchers, Tory backbenchers, who I know and like, but they are not household names. They've both got knighthoods. They both lost their seats at the last election. No one is jumping up and down saying those are knighthoods for failure. And I think it's churlish that people are being nasty about Sadiq Khan.
But they're talking about the crime
knighthood.
statistics,
He's a very
though, aren't they?
distinguished politician.
Knife crime increased by more than 50%, violent crime soared.
And whose fault is that? I mean, Chris Philp has been very bold today, hasn't he, in the papers, you know, talking about the Shadow Home Secretary. He's very upset about it all. But when he was in government, where was the funding allocated to London to tackle knife crime? Where has the provision been for police officers to be on the beat, neighbourhood police officers who actually are able to infiltrate local areas and actually have some kind of idea about what's going on? The Conservatives took away that funding.
Well, I suppose your earlier point, it's a pretty good one, actually. Mayors are characterful figures. They're figureheads, aren't they? And so, therefore, they're going to get stuff thrown at them as well as getting praise. What do you think about this huge discrepancy between the fact that the sub-postmasters are still trying to get some kind of goddamn compensation, but they're getting gongs? I mean, that's a kind of an ironic twist, isn't it?
Well, it's just bizarre how government works. And, you know, these are very large sums of money which should be paid out. And I was talking to somebody this week about the infected blood scandal. And the Labour government has done a very good thing in very early making a quick decision. I think it's £11 billion that they're going to set aside to compensate people who got infected blood from the 1970s onwards. But having talked to a former SNP MP who led this campaign, Philippa Whitford, she was saying that a lot of people now are having to fill out endless forms, prove their eligibility. It's taking months. It might even take years. A lot of these people may die. And again, you're seeing it with the sub-postmasters. It's just, you know, the government on the one hand says, yes, this is wrong, we must compensate. And then the bureaucracy, the Treasury that doesn't want to spend the money, makes it as difficult as possible to get it. It really is outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, the Conservatives really should have... I mean, they committed to it in name only when Rishi Sunak was leaving, that he would actually compensate these sub-postmasters, but never did. And it's unfortunate that it has to fall in the Labour budget. And if you look at some of the other policies that they've rolled out, such as taking away the winter fuel payments and not adding to the two-child benefit cap, they don't want to spend the money. And so I suppose it's going to be just a gong for now.
Do you think that is there a deeper point to the New Year's honours list? I sometimes wonder about it. What's the real point of the gongs, of the awards? What's behind it?
Emily Thornberry said something lovely, actually. She said that both of her grandmothers wouldn't have been allowed to work when they had been married, and so she would wonder what, you know, how they would receive her, you know...
What they would have made of it.
Yeah, what they would have made of her receiving that honour. And I think, you know, when you think about it like that, it's quite lovely. But, I mean, it is in name only, isn't it? It's not a legislative... you know, it's like the Mayor of London getting it.
But then it's a reward for those people who've, you know, done something for the community, isn't it? About sort of celebrating people who've gone the extra mile.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between kind of establishment gongs, where people kind of, as part of the establishment, get their reward. And often it's people, I think, have a kind of fair point in saying you were just doing your job, Mr. or Mrs. Permanent Undersecretary at the Department of Widgets, and you've now got your damehood or knighthood for doing your job. What's that about? But then when you get kind of community awards, I've noticed somebody from my old constituency in Wantage, a woman called Micaiah Beams, who is 18, has had a brain tumour since she was 4. She has raised £300,000 for charity to give kids treats. And not only is that going to mean a lot to her, but also that it sounds a bit a cliche. You hear it, honours, you know, this isn't just for me, this is for everyone. It does put a spotlight on what is happening in a local community.
Well, you've answered my question, because that's exactly how I feel. And also, you've got these national treasures like Stephen Fry, who's got a knighthood, and Gareth Southgate, who's obviously, you know, the best England football manager in most people's living memory. I remember Sir Francie, who did win us the World Cup in '66. But he thoroughly deserved that, didn't he?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Southgate.
I mean, he didn't win anything, but...
well, no, but come on,
he got us into 2 European Championship finals. I was lucky to be at the semi-final when we beat Denmark in the first Euros, and that was an amazing evening. So he brought, again, a lot of joy to the nation. And so, again, you know, are you rewarding Gareth Southgate? Yes, you are. But you're also saying that was a moment in time where the whole nation felt really just at the top and so happy, and that was all thanks to Gareth Southgate, and that is a recognition of what he did for the country.
He didn't bring it home, but he sort of polished the shelves, and sort of got the spotlights on the plinth all ready for the next one.
And, you know, he really served hospitality in this country, who'd been hemorrhaged by COVID, because, you know, it meant we all were down at the pub for a lot longer. Many more weeks
before sales of waistcoats went up. You know, I think you're underestimating from a fashion perspective as well.
In the honours. What's happened to Dame Taylor Swift?
Oh, well,
you put £1 billion into the British economy.
That's true.
Services to the British economy.
Can you give honours to foreigners?
You can.
you?
In fact, you get
Well, I don't know.
as a
They love
minister.
taking foreign money this lot,
here's
don't they?
here's a little quirky fact.
OK.
Here's a quirky fact. If you get a gong and you're not a British citizen, you don't get it from the royal family. You have to get it from the junior minister for Tic Tacs. So I gave it to, I think it was the photographer Mario Testino. I think I gave him a gong.
Was he honoured to receive it from you in person?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He said it was the greatest moment of his life meeting me. But yes, in fact, the clever thing would be to give Taylor Swift a damehood, and then Lisa Nandy can give it to her because the king can't.
OK. It's also the time of year where the National Archives office opens some of its files. And one of them, there's so much that's come out today, but just one of the quirkier ones is that when Tony Blair brought in the Freedom of Information Act, which he later in his memoirs said was one of the worst mistakes he'd ever made, I think, what was the quote? He said it was naive, foolish, irresponsible... mistake made by a nincompoop, describing himself. But what's emerged from these papers released today is that Number 10 was quietly, under the table, advising people not to send dodgy emails to each other, which might have to be disclosed under the Freedom of Information Act, but to use these, to use Post-it notes, to write down really sensitive stuff on a Post-it note, stick it on someone's desk. So once they'd imbibed the information, it was a bit like file and forget. You could screw it up and throw it away.
Yeah.
And it would never have to be disclosed.
Well, I mean, that's...
Is
Tony
it
Blair
practice?
It is standard practice, yeah. The amount of Post-it notes that I got through as a minister, you wouldn't believe.
And was it sensitive stuff that you didn't want to see in an email?
Incredible things like the level of the arts budget, you know. No, I mean, I don't remember getting that kind of information. But, I mean, I think Tony Blair was right. I mean, there are a lot of freedom of information requests which cause, you know, a lot of bureaucracy. But I'm sure Ava would say, as a journalist, that tough.
Well, yeah,
we need the transparency.
Yes, but I mean, they still do. Actually, freedom of information has come under attack in the last, 6 to 12 months, I would say. It's actually very difficult to have your requests answered now. You get a lot of pushback from departments saying, oh, no, sorry, we haven't got the time to do that, which they are allowed to do.
But also there's a cost factor, though, isn't there?
There is a cost factor, but then the questions that you're asking, you would assume that they would actually have an answer to. I mean, I think one that I didn't get answered this year was the Home Office had bought, I think, around 90 office chairs, and they were extraordinarily expensive. So I asked how much they were, and I believe they told me that they didn't have enough time to tot it all up or to count it all up. So, you know, you think, well, you should have that written down somewhere.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's been on a Post-it that's been thrown
possibly.
away. Yeah.
Or reading between the lines. I mean, people get suspicious, though, don't they, when information like that can't be released?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure the default mentality of every government department is to give as little information as possible, because every government department knows journalists are going to make hay with it and they're not going to put it... It's very rare to get a freedom of information question say, you know, how much money have you saved and how good a job are you doing?
Please tell us. We'd love
we'd like
to know.
To put it in lights.
We want all the details.
But I want to ask you this. When your fingers were fiddling with the levers of power, when you sent emails and texts and WhatsApps and stuff, I don't know about you, but I have a rule. I never send an email or a text or a WhatsApp or anything at all that I wouldn't be reasonably comfortable seeing on the front page of the Daily Mail the next morning. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if I have to have a really sensitive discussion, I have it face to face.
Yes.
And possibly on the phone, but you know, even now we know that phones are tapped. Were you trusting of sending emails within government departments?
Yeah, I think I probably was. I mean, I think I was a minister ages ago, and I certainly didn't have my fingers anywhere near the levers of power. But you know, so WhatsApp was just coming in, I think, when I was a minister towards the end of my time as a minister. And I always think that somebody should write a kind of thesis about how WhatsApp has changed how government is done, because we saw from the COVID inquiry how much government business is done by WhatsApp messages, and we saw...
Well, because of end-to-end security.
People not following the Madeley rule because they said things on those WhatsApps which, when they came to light, were very, very embarrassing.
It nearly brought down the Labour Party as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it nearly, during Corbyn, you know, when we had the Ford report, all of those were, you know, WhatsApps, reams and reams of WhatsApps were examined. So we are going to go back to word of mouth, aren't we?
Yeah.
Which perhaps is where it should be.
Good
but
point.
I think the point about WhatsApp is that people sound off in the way that we all sound off on Twitter occasionally, and it does kind of ramp things up. You know, the Tory parties that were sort of falling apart, you had these WhatsApp groups of Tory MPs kind of killing each other on WhatsApp. Not
much room to talk about this now. I've only got half a minute left, but I found this extraordinary. Did you know that more than 1,000 people went to accident and emergency units last year with hiccups?
I can believe that.
Can you?
Yes.
I mean, what a statistic, though.
Yeah. A lot of people go with blocked noses as well, don't they?
So it talks about the number with
colds,
coughs, earache, headaches, nausea, insomnia and backache. But yeah,
the sort of knee-jerk reaction is you want to go, what idiot has gone to A&E with a, you know, with a sore throat or whatever. But on the other side of it, you can, well, if you can't get in at your GP, where are you meant to go?
It really is signs of an overstretched system that they can't get help elsewhere.
I think that's a perfectly fair point. I mean, if you know from your own experience of how you succumb to certain conditions, if you know you need antibiotics, but you can't get any because you can't see a GP, then, yeah, I can see why you'd be tempted to go to A&E.
Yeah, I mean, urgent care doesn't exist in a lot of places now. I think, you know, even in London, I think we've only got a couple.
We need more. We need our pharmacies to do more.
Our farmers?
Pharmacies.
Pharmacies.
And farmers.
Don't go to a farmer if you've got hiccups.
Stepping up.
I love
stepping up to treat people with hiccups.
Farmer jars for
outrageous.